Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. For Duggar family latest news update, please subscribe the channel and press the bell icon. The August sun beat down on the small Arkansas town of Springdale, but the heat in the courthouse was something entirely different. Tension buzzed in the air like a hive ready to erupt. Every seat was full, whispers swirled through the gallery, and the media's flashing cameras lit up the front steps outside. At the center of it all was Jessa Duggar Seawald, sitting rigid in her seat at the defendant's table. The normally composed and smiling Duggar daughter now wore an expression that was a mixture of exhaustion, defiance, and disbelief. Her hair, usually styled for TV appearances and Instagram posts, hung loose around her shoulders. The charges were serious: fraudulent property dealings, obstruction of justice, and tampering with evidence in connection to a community housing project gone wrong. For weeks, rumors had swirled online about shady deals involving a local charity, and now Jessa's name was front and center in the scandal. Beside her sat her attorney, a tall man with sharp features named Thomas Garrison. Across the aisle, the prosecuting attorney leafed through a thick binder of evidence. But all eyes kept drifting to the man sitting a few rows back in the audience, Ben Seawald, Jessa's husband. Ben's face was tight, jaw clenched. His arms were crossed, and he refused to meet Jessa's eyes. That in itself was enough to send the gossip mill spinning. The Duggars had always presented a united front, but today that facade seemed to be cracking. The arrest that shocked everyone. Just 2 weeks earlier, the Duggar family had been gathered at their home for Sunday dinner when law enforcement vehicles rolled into the driveway. Cameras from a local news station had caught the whole thing. Officers approached the front door, and Jim Bob, the family patriarch, stepped outside with a forced smile, trying to keep his composure. When they asked for Jessa, she appeared from the hallway, her children clinging to her dress. Without explaining details, officers informed her she was under arrest. The moment her wrists were cuffed, chaos broke out. Michelle Duggar cried out in shock. Jana covered her mouth with both hands, and Ben stepped forward, but not to defend her. Instead, he looked at the officers and said coldly, "Do what you need to do. I'll be home with the kids." That sentence, caught clearly on camera, went viral within hours. Some fans accused him of betrayal, others defended him, but no one could deny that it painted a picture of a marriage under extreme strain. Courtroom whispers now in the courthouse. Ben's absence from the defense table was a statement in itself. Normally, Duggar spouses sat loyally by each other's side, offering emotional support. His decision to sit apart, and not even glance her way, was fueling speculation. Behind him, Anna Duggar leaned forward to whisper something to Joanna. Jim Bob sat stiffly, eyes fixed on the judge, while Michelle dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. The prosecution began to lay out its case. Jessa had allegedly been involved in falsifying documents to approve the sale of a charity-owned property to a private investor, at a fraction of its market value. The investor was later revealed to be a business partner of a Seawald family acquaintance. Jessa speaks. When the judge finally allowed the defense to respond, Jessa took the stand. Her voice was steady at first, but there was an undercurrent of frustration. "I have never stolen anything in my life," she began. "Yes, my name was on those documents. Yes, I signed off on the sale. But I was told everything was legal. I didn't profit from this. My intention was to help the community, not hurt it." Prosecutor pounced, pointing out inconsistencies in her statements to investigators and noting the sudden deletion of emails from her personal account just days before the investigation began. Jessa's jaw tightened. "I deleted emails because I was scared. I didn't know what they'd think. I didn't want my family dragged through the mud again." This, a ripple went through the room. It was a veiled reference to her brother Josh's legal troubles, a wound that still ran deep for the entire family. Ben's outrageous reaction. Midway through her testimony, Jessa glanced toward Ben, just a flicker of her eyes, a silent plea. But instead of sympathy, she was met with a look of cold fury. He shook his head slowly, as if to say, "You brought this on yourself." Witnesses sitting nearby later claimed Ben muttered something under his breath. "You lied to me, Jess. You lied to all of us." This quiet but devastating moment became the clip every news outlet replayed on loop. To the public, it looked like the husband had turned against his wife in her darkest hour. Duggar family divided. After a short recess, the family gathered in the hallway. Cameras and microphones swarmed them. Jim Bob tried to brush past reporters, saying only we're trusting God's plan. Inside the courthouse cafeteria, tensions boiled over. Joanna confronted Ben. "Why are you acting like she's already guilty?" "She's your wife," Ben's voice was low but sharp. "She's my wife, but she's been keeping secrets from me for months. Do you think I didn't notice the late-night phone calls? The locked filing cabinet? I asked her about it, and she told me it was nothing important. Now look where we are." Jill Duggar stood nearby, torn. She had always been close to Jessa, but also understood Ben's frustration. The sisters had already lived through enough scandals to know that half-truths could destroy a family surprise witness. Just when it seemed the trial might drag on for weeks, the prosecution called a surprise witness, Caleb Brown, a former friend of the family who claimed he had direct knowledge of the fraudulent deal. Caleb testified that Jessa had personally asked him to make the numbers look better for the property sale. He claimed she promised him a cut of future profits if he kept quiet. Gasps filled the courtroom. Jessa's attorney immediately attacked his credibility, pointing out Caleb's criminal record and history of lying to avoid charges. But the damage was done. The jury now had an image of Jessa as someone who could be calculating and manipulative. Breaking point on the third day of the trial. After a grueling cross-examination, Jessa broke down in tears on the stand. "Do you think I wanted this?" she cried. "Do you think I wanted my children to see their mother dragged through court? I was trying to fix something that was already broken. Maybe I made mistakes, but I'm not a criminal." Michelle's sobs echoed through the courtroom. Jim Bob squeezed her hand, but his face remained unreadable. The verdict. After hours of deliberation, the jury returned. The room fell silent as the foreman stood on the charge of fraudulent property dealings. "Not guilty." A wave of relief washed over Jessa. "On the charge of obstruction of justice, guilty." Her head dropped. On the charge of tampering with evidence, guilty. The judge scheduled sentencing for the following month. Jessa could face up to 2 years in prison, though her lawyer vowed to appeal. Aftermath. Outside the courthouse, chaos reigned. Reporters shoved microphones in Ben's face, asking if he still supported his wife. His response was short and instantly controversial. "I love my children. I'll do whatever I have to for them. That's all I have to say." To many, it sounded like a non-answer, and social media lit up with debates over whether Ben had abandoned Jessa in her time of need. At home, the Duggar family gathered for a private dinner. The atmosphere was tense, filled with half-hearted prayers and forced conversation. Jana offered to help watch the kids if Jessa went to prison. Jill stayed quiet, unsure if speaking up would help or hurt. Jessa, sitting at the head of the table, stared at her plate. She didn't know if her marriage would survive this. She didn't know if her public image could be salvaged. But she did know one thing. This wasn't the end of her story. Epilogue. In the weeks that followed, the Duggar family's reality TV contracts came under review. Sponsors backed out. Church members whispered. Jessa began preparing for sentencing, determined to fight for her freedom. Meanwhile, Ben moved into the guest house on his parents' property, claiming he needed space to think. One late night, Jessa sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through headlines that called her everything from a martyr to a con artist. She put her phone down, took a deep breath, and whispered to herself, "They don't know the whole truth. But one day they will." The stage was set for another round of Duggar drama, and the world was watching. Jim Bob arrested. Jim Bob's house sold for $2.5 million, demolished. It was a sunny morning in Tontatown, Arkansas, but the Duggar household was clouded with confusion, whispers, and a sense of disbelief. For decades, Jim Bob Duggar had been the face of the massive Duggar family, respected, feared, and admired by many for raising 19 children with firm values. But now, everything had come crashing down. News spread like wildfire. Jim Bob Duggar had been arrested. The breaking point started like any other day. Michelle Duggar was in the kitchen preparing breakfast for the few children who still lived at home. Jim Bob had left early in the morning, supposedly for a business meeting. But hours later, FBI agents knocked on the door, their presence calm but their message explosive. "We have a warrant for the arrest of Mr. Jim Bob Duggar," one of them said. Michelle stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. "What is this about?" she asked, confused and scared. "He's being investigated for financial fraud and illegal property dealings connected to a shady real estate company he secretly started 5 years ago," the agent explained. Secrets and lies. As the news made headlines, more shocking details emerged. Jim Bob had allegedly funneled large sums of money through shell companies, all while claiming religious donations on his taxes. What's more disturbing, some of the properties he had invested in had environmental violations, and others were bought using forged documents. For years, Jim Bob had maintained the image of a conservative, God-fearing man. But behind the scenes, he had been living a double life, chasing wealth, manipulating paperwork, and keeping secrets even from his own family. Michelle's betrayal. What truly shocked the nation wasn't Jim Bob's arrest, it was Michelle's response. Just days after his arrest, Michelle released a statement to the press. "I have known something was wrong for a long time. I tried to get him to open up, but he shut me out. I begged him to be honest with me and our children, but he refused. I cannot support what he has done, and I will not stand by him in court." Fans and critics alike were stunned. Michelle, who had once proudly stood beside her husband through every scandal and controversy, was now turning her back on him. She had contacted a real estate agent to sell the family home, a massive estate estimated at $2.50 million. The children react. The Duggar children had mixed reactions. Jessa was heartbroken but refused to speak to the media. Jill, who had been estranged from the family, wrote on Instagram, "Truth always comes out. I pray for healing and accountability. No one is above the law." Jinger, living in California, was reportedly devastated but said she had suspected things weren't right for years. Josh, whose own criminal past haunted the family, remained silent. Many of the younger children were shielded from the chaos, but the older ones were left to pick up the pieces, selling the mansion. Within weeks, real estate photos of the Duggar mansion were published online. The sprawling home that once echoed with laughter, prayers, and daily chores was now empty, its rooms stripped of memories. Kitchen where Michelle had cooked countless meals, the boys' dormitory Jim Bob proudly built, all were now just spaces waiting for new owners. The house was listed for $2.5 million, and a wealthy buyer from Texas quickly showed interest. Property, despite its history, was a stunning piece of land. By the end of the month, the house was sold. A chapter closed. Courtroom drama. Jim Bob appeared in court handcuffed and pale. Courtroom was filled with reporters, family members, and legal teams. His lawyers argued that he was being framed, but the prosecution presented detailed documents, emails, and testimonies from former employees. Michelle did not attend. Instead, she was seen at a local women's Bible study group, quietly holding her Bible and talking to friends. When asked by reporters if she would ever forgive Jim Bob, she simply said, "I forgive him as a Christian. But as a wife and mother, I will not forget what he's done to this family." A family divided. The Duggar brand was over. TLC, which had already canceled their shows long ago, released a statement. "We are saddened to hear of the ongoing troubles within the Duggar family. We hope they can find healing and peace." Merchandise sales, book royalties, and even YouTube ad revenue began to drop. The once powerful Duggar name was now associated with scandal and betrayal. Children began going their separate ways. Some changed their last names legally. Others started therapy. And a few even publicly denounced their father's teachings. New beginnings. Months later, Michelle was spotted in a smaller home in rural Arkansas. Rumors suggested she was starting a ministry for single mothers and had even filed for separation, a near unthinkable move in Duggar family tradition. Jim Bob, on the other hand, remained under house arrest awaiting trial. The judge had frozen many of his accounts, and legal experts predicted a potential 10 to 15-year sentence if convicted on all counts. The once mighty patriarch was now isolated, broken, and disgraced. Final thoughts. The fall of Jim Bob Duggar sent shockwaves through not only his family but also the Christian conservative community that once idolized him. His arrest revealed the dangers of unchecked power and blind loyalty. And Michelle's decision to walk away, both emotionally and physically, was a moment of liberation, not just for her but for many women who had felt silenced in similar relationships. As the world watches the aftermath, one thing is clear: the Duggar legacy will never be the same.